All right, today we're going to map a new kind of battlefield. It's one where the lines between war and peace have gotten, well, incredibly blurry. We're living in an age of rising global tension. And you know what? The old rulebook for how countries fight is basically being thrown out. So let's dive in and try to make sense of what's really going on.
Let's just ask it straight up. What does war even mean anymore? It seems like a simple question, but the answer is getting more and more complicated. We see these suspicious fires breaking out in military warehouses, undersea cables getting mysteriously cut, massive cyber attacks. Politicians will throw around terms like hybrid warfare. But what is that? What does it actually look like?
And yeah, this picture says it all, right? This isn't your grandfather's battlefield with tanks rolling through fields. This is the command center. This is a place where conflict can be launched with a keyboard, through satellites, in this weird space that feels like it's somewhere between real peace and all-out war. Okay, so to get a handle on all this, first things first, we need to know who the players are. We've definitely entered a new chapter in what strategists have long called the Great Game, this high-stakes chess match between the world's most powerful nations. And the name of the game today is Great Power Competition. You'll hear the acronym GPC a lot. After a few decades where it seemed like everyone was sort of trying to get along, the world's most powerful countries are now in a clear, if undeclared, rivalry. They're all competing for influence, for resources, and for security. So who are we talking about? Well, first, you have the United States. Still, by far, the world's biggest military and economic power. But let's be honest, it's really distracted by some deep divisions at home. Then you have China, this economic powerhouse whose incredible rise is now hitting some pretty serious bumps in the road. And finally, there's Russia. It's a power that's in decline, really bleeding itself dry in Ukraine and more looking like a junior partner to China. And here's the thing you have to get. This competition isn't just about who has the biggest army. It's a struggle on every single front. These powers are constantly wrestling for diplomatic control at the UN. They're battling over totally different economic visions, like China's Belt and Road versus the G7's plans. And they're fighting a nonstop information war online for our hearts and minds. It is a constant 24/7 contest. So if a head-on collision, a full-blown war, is just too risky for everyone, how do these powers actually fight it out? Well, they do it in this murky, ambiguous space that we now call the gray zone. And the weapon of choice in this gray zone is the hybrid threat. Now think of it like a strategic Swiss Army knife. It's this mix of everything. You might have some conventional military moves mixed with cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, economic pressure, political meddling, anything and everything to mess with your rival without actually starting a shooting war. And that's what the gray zone is. It is the battlefield. It's this intentionally ambiguous space where countries can do things and then plausibly deny they did them. It's all about creating confusion and operating just below the level of what we would normally call an act of war. And this fight is spilling over into places we never used to think of as battlefields. Cyberspace, obviously, is a huge one. It's a frontier for spying, for attacks on critical infrastructure like power grids, even for messing with elections. Outer space, too. It's no longer just this common heritage of humanity. It's now seen as the ultimate strategic high ground. And of course, we're seeing a huge comeback of proxy wars, where the big powers arm and support opposite sides in a conflict, like in Ukraine. Okay, so hearing all this, you might think, wow, it's the Wild West out there, no rules. But it's not that simple. Organizations like the International Committee of the Red Cross are really pushing back on that idea. They make the point that even with all these new tactics, the fundamental rules of international law, they haven't just disappeared. And this is such a key point. The issue isn't really a legal gray zone, it's a factual one. The problem isn't that we don't have laws against these actions. The problem is proving who did it. In the fog of the gray zone, it's incredibly hard to get clear, undeniable information and say, you did this. So the challenge is attribution, not some big gap in the law books. But while all this sneaky gray zone stuff is happening, there's a much older, much scarier threat starting to reemerge from the shadows. The ultimate gamble in this new era of competition. See, for most of our lives, there's been this powerful, unwritten rule. Don't even think about using nuclear weapons. Experts call it the nuclear taboo. It's the shared global understanding that these weapons are so uniquely horrific that their use is just off the table. But that taboo? It's starting to crumble. And if you want to understand why that taboo is fading, just look at this. It's a really stark comparison. On one side, you have Iran. For the most part, it played by the rules of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, it practiced restraint, and what was the result? Its nuclear program was attacked. Then you have North Korea. It walked away from the treaty, openly built the bomb, tested it, and has successfully prevented a similar attack. The lesson that sends to the rest of the world is, well, it's incredibly dangerous. And believe me, other countries are watching and learning this lesson. Take South Korea. They live right next door to a nuclear North Korea. And today, around 70% of the South Korean public supports getting their own nuclear weapons. They see what happened to countries that gave them up, and they see what didn't happen to North Korea, and they are drawing their own very logical conclusions. And this is the absolutely terrifying paradox we're living in. The very things that are done to try and stop the spread of nuclear weapons, like military strikes, are actually making them seem more essential. They're reinforcing the idea that if you really want to guarantee your country's survival, having a nuke is the only surefire way to do it. Okay, we've talked about the players, the new battlefield, and the scariest risks. So let's pull it all together. What are the big takeaways here? What does this all mean for us? First, and this is huge, we have to stop thinking about war and peace as an on-off switch. That's an outdated idea. We are now living in a state of persistent competition. It's a constant, low-level conflict that's being fought every single day on economic, digital, and political fronts. Takeaway number 2, the world we thought we were building, this one big, connected global village, it's starting to break apart. The whole architecture of our world, from the global economy to the internet itself, is fracturing along the fault lines of this new great power competition. And you can see this splintering happening all over the place. In economics, it's a battle of competing infrastructure models. In cyberspace, that dream of one open global internet is dead. It's splintering into an American-led internet, a Chinese-style controlled internet, and others. Even outer space is becoming just another contested zone. And the final, maybe the most sobering takeaway is this. While none of the great powers actually want a direct, catastrophic war, the danger of one happening is growing. With so many different fronts of competition, so many proxy conflicts, so much tension, the chance of a miscalculation, one little mistake that spirals out of control, is higher now than it has been in decades. And that leaves us, all of us, with the biggest question of our era. In a world of constant competition, where the lines are blurry and the fighting never really stops, how on earth do we avoid that ultimate catastrophe? That is the central, terrifying challenge of this new great game.